Hi, kids. Guess we're not doing too well with the SHP theory, I see. An idea that seemingly was half-cocked or came up with quick or something to that event. And a lot of the other fans have had to put the pieces together themselves because they're damn sure not going to do it over in Silent Hill Ascension land. That being said, I'm going to do all the heavy lifting for you guys, and we're going to absolutely puzzle piece the storylines together on the basis that the SHP, or Silent Hill phenomenon, is absolutely prevalent in every single one of the Silent Hills. That being said, with the assistance of a number of different notes and characters and events and things of that sort, I'm going to show you exactly why the SHP could and couldn't work. Let's go.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Silent Hill Origins serves as a prequel to the original Silent Hill game, following the journey of a truck driver, Travis Grady, as he becomes ensnared in the nightmarish town of Silent Hill. Alright, you with me so far? The game begins with Travis driving through foggy roads near Silent Hill when he swerves to avoid hitting a young girl who suddenly appears in the middle of the road. After the incident, Travis sets out to find the girl and unravel the mystery surrounding the town. As Travis explores Silent Hill, he encounters grotesque monsters, disturbing environments, and eerie supernatural stuff. Along the way, he discovers clues about the town's dark history, including the connection to a sinister cult and a series of ritualistic murders. Travis also experiences hallucinations and flashbacks that hint towards his own troubled past, including memories of his childhood and traumatic events involving his family. These revelations force Travis to confront his inner demons and come to terms with his own guilt and regrets. This is what we've come to know about Origins without the inclusion of what I'm about to tell you. But as Travis delves deeper into the heart of Silent Hill, he uncovers the truth about a girl he encountered in the road. Ultimately, Travis must confront the malevolent forces that dwell within Silent Hill and face the darkness within himself in order to survive. Okay? Throughout the game, you're faced with moral choices and branching paths that affect the outcome of the story, leading to multiple endings, which, as you do in Silent Hill. As we go through the story following Travis Grady, we have to keep something in mind. One of the biggest differences between him as a protagonist and any of the other protagonists in the Silent Hill franchise is he was not called, nor was he summoned to Silent Hill. This is the first and only character that actually ended up in Silent Hill that you play as, that simply showed up by happenstance. He has no clear motivations for showing up here. There was no letter, there was no message, there was nothing received that would have Travis Grady just need to come to Silent Hill. He was just a guy who stumbled across Silent Hill just in the nick of time, and Alessa used him to kind of gain some help. Now, this does not take away from the fact that he did in fact need he did in fact have a slew of different mental issues based on his own upbringing, things like that. But that was just incidental. He was not summoned. He didn't have, much like Harry Mason or any other character going into Silent Hill, there was a clear motivation of why they were going here. He did not. So then the question remains, what has Travis seeing all these terrible things? Is it just having a bad past? Is it having a connection more than he thinks with Alessa? Any of these things? No, it's actually simpler than that. Silent Hill serves as what I like to call a nexus point. A nexus point being the focal source of the energy coming out of whatever, essentially. But in this case, the nexus point being Silent Hill means anything that comes within its confines become exacerbated. If SHP had a name before there was a Silent Hill, it would be called Depression. However, once you get to Silent Hill as a nexus point, everything becomes influenced, everything becomes much worse, everything becomes far more sadistic or disturbing. You need a nexus point in order to initiate the beginning effects of SHP. And we see it here with Travis Grady as initially walking in, despite what you may know about any of the previous citizens of Silent Hill, you get to see firsthand what happens when a stranger just wanders in. Now, based on Travis Grady's past, you already know the man has been through some shit. Things are very, very, very dire for him. Can definitely change a person, get them very depressed and all that good stuff. Very traumatic. However, it's supposed to remain that way. The only time it changes is once you go through the threshold of Silent Hill. And only through the threshold of Silent Hill. There's no other cities involved. This is the prequel to the original story. So this is, as a fan, when you're playing, this is all you know. Now, the reason I say this is all you know is because, based on chronological order, it's Origins first, of course. Set aside what you know about 1 and 2 and 3, before Origins comes out way later. Since we're doing this in order, all you're supposed to know, or all Grady is supposed to know, is what he sees. Zero ties to anything. He walks in, he's got these things on display. Now, this begs the question, how are these things affecting him just the same as it would someone with traumatic pasts and murder history and lighting their own parents on fire and family, all these things? How does that come into play? That part's actually a very, very simple explanation, and this is based on a lot of the lore already mentioned in previous notes and documents and things like that. This part of the story, or this part of the lore of Silent Hill, I call the catalyst lore. You see, in order for SHP to work and in order for the Nexus to become active before it gains power and momentum, it's going to need a catalyst. This catalyst happened to be Alessa Gillespie. Alessa Gillespie actually contained inside of her these spiritual magical properties needed to convince, number one, the cult that she had to be sacrificed in the attempt to summon a god, but also it convinced Silent Hill itself that its power was greater than just delusional hallucinations or events and moments and spooky fog and things of that sort. It could actually be manipulated, contorted. Once Alessa became the poster child for bad vibes and bad juju, this is where the SHP becomes prevalent. So in part 1, when you play as Grady, you get to see what happens when her power infuses with the Nexus point that is Silent Hill, with the catalyst being Alessa Gillespie. But for the time being, everything is contained. The only reach Silent Hill had / the Catalyst had was in the outskirts of town. And this is why Travis Grady was able to be obtained and brought into Silent Hill, as he was the only quote-unquote innocent you could bring into the town. Everyone on the inside of the town, any residents and things of that sort, they were already compromised. So Alessa gaining any sort of help or advantage would not come from the inhabitants of Silent Hill, as they were the ones who put her there. But this is as far as her reach and Silent Hill's reach was. The Nexus point can only give you so much extension, I guess is the best way to put it. And with the SHP being born in this moment, if we're to believe the theories and notes from Last Message and Mr. Novak himself, if we're to believe that this would be ground zero, and patient zero would be Alessa. And the only reason SHP has come to be because it had a boost of power gained from Alessa herself. So Travis Grady easily becomes a pawn for Alessa, as Alessa's using him to further her cause of both getting revenge and finding a way to kind of split her body in half and send one half of her body outside of the town, outside of the nightmare. Whether to have a normal life or anything like that, who knows? Travis has no idea, but this is what he's a part of. This is the game he is playing right now. Now, this should be the very first sign that Silent Hill is no longer localized to just the town of Silent Hill. This easily could have broken into a multi-pronged storyline based in a few different places right at this point, but instead they just kept calling it Silent Hill and things like that. And I go into that in my other video where I explain that the title should not be Silent Hill because you have so much more, I guess, real estate in other parts of the plot. But I digress. So you're assisting in Alessa escaping. Alessa only knew of the power to escape or split herself and essentially split her body in half due to the fact that she's imbued now with the powers of Silent Hill, with the properties of Silent Hill. She has attained the powers of the Nexus itself and now has found a way to escape. This is in conjunction with a number of other different curses and magics and things of that sort, stuff more grounded in their religion, stuff more grounded in spirituality, and some of it not even having anything to do with the town itself. Let me do this in a more digestible way to explain this, kind of, so we can move on to the next game. Okay, so you have the Nexus. All right, we got that part down. There is a focal nexus point that is just haunted ground or spiritual ground or Spookyville or whatever. Then you add the inclusion of a catalyst. This catalyst comes in, and by means of great distress, the nexus point can now latch itself onto this greatly distressed person. Rather than just absorbing it or something crazy like that, like it was DBZ, it feeds off of her just as much as she feeds off of it, and they begin helping each other. It's a tried and true method that basically says as long as a catalyst is in the nexus point, that becomes the main source of fuel for that engine. And so thus begins the SHP. However, back then, there is no SHP, okay? It makes sense there wouldn't be any because this would be the first example of it ever existing. But it's behind the wall of the actual real world with very little reach. So in Silent Hill Origins, you're dealing with Alessa gaining these new powers, but not being able to expand very far. Yeah. Now, before you get in my ass and start talking about the comic books and everything like that and what documents say, number one, I'm sticking to the initial games. Not the initial games, I'm sticking to all the games and only the games. You start talking about comic book land or movie land or the offshoot storyline of Shattered Memories, it starts making less and less sense only because they're... Focus, all right? If you want to add and include those things and say the whole theory falls apart because that isn't there, because I didn't include the comic... You got better things going on, probably. But what I will tell you is the first example of SHP happened in Origins, running with their example, if we're supposed to. And it happened when Grady was yanked into Silent Hill, and while he was attempting to help Alessa, he couldn't help but see memories and fragments of his past come back to attack him. He's not necessarily here to cause any problem. He isn't there to become the worst person ever. He had been through some shit. And yet somehow, even though he had been through some shit, he was being treated like a common protagonist or antagonist in a Silent Hill franchise. And he didn't really do anything. Anyway. Now, I can spare you the plot synopsis for these games, but what I can tell you is... Silent Hill 1 is when things take an interesting turn. Following with the SHP protocols, Silent Hill 1 is a very interesting and unique turn, as half of Alessa is now outside of the confines of Silent Hill. And while that may be all well and good, it's not Silent Hill that actually allows her to do it. It's all this other magical properties and her own magic that allows her to do it. Because before then, Silent Hill was kind of just limited to Silent Hill. It was just a haunted town with foggy stuff and magical things. Having Alessa be able to leave the barriers of the city itself in order to end up into the hands of Harry Mason and even be a sentient person on the other side of that. Cheryl was her own person. But she was conjured up through the power of Alessa in Silent Hill. She was broken off of Alessa. One side stayed here in Silent Hill, and the other side went out to live her life flipping burgers or, whatever the case may be. So this is when we first get examples of not being constrained to Silent Hill. And while it's pretty clear this is the first Silent Hill many people have played, especially the older fans and things like that, using the lines and plot ideologies from the newer Silent Hills on this retroactively turns into a situation where, yes, indeed, the first Silent Hill gave proof that Silent Hill could affect things outside of Silent Hill. I think I said Silent Hill way too many times in the same sentence. But anyway, so, and in this case, you get to see what happens when a seemingly innocent character walks into Silent Hill, can see manifestations, and they now have a physical form. This is not something where later on you think maybe I'm the only one that sees this. Harry sees these demons and birds and things of that sort flying around. There's no confusion there. Not only does he see it, but he can also see his daughter. He can also see regular people. He is just walking through this nightmare, and it changes around him. Rather than changes for him or to him, it changes around him, and he simply just travels through it. Now, because he hasn't had any sort of traumas and things of that sort, you don't necessarily get to see monsters conjured up just for him. There are no monsters based on his personality. All he sees are the monsters, his daughter, Sybil, regular humans. This is what abandoned Silent Hill looks like. And even when it goes into Otherworld, the only reason it goes into Otherworld is because the world and its plane changes. It doesn't change for him at all. It has no interest in him. And one could even say that even when he died in the beginning of the game, when being chased by the little ones, he came back to life. He was alive. And it was made to look like a nightmare, giving the impression that he was not being punished or anything for that matter. Instead, you're dealing with another situation where an innocent man believed he was doing the right thing, so now he shows up into Silent Hill where he finds that a cult is trying to resurrect a god. In the meantime, Alessa's power has now grown exponentially. You're allowed to see the other world, and instead of transitioning between the two, she can simply manipulate the world to transform into it. There's no more need to gain access to it. They're simply just becoming it. And this is symbolized by the air raid sirens and everything like that. And that's all well and good. But you can tell just how much more influence she has and how things are working here. You go through as Harry Mason, you find a number of different people walking around doing their own thing, but they seem to be stuck in the same loop that they were stuck in Origins. And because of that, this only means that they have been trapped in here that much longer. God only knows how long. We're going to assume since Cheryl is, 8 or 9 in the story, we've got to assume they've been trapped in here for about 10 years. Harry is too busy looking at the abandoned version of the city that has no power or anything like that. But God only knows what Dahlia sees, or Kaufman for that matter. While Lisa, all the while, has been simply watching the carcass that is Alessa. Now I'm going to completely turn your heads upside down on this one and propose this to you. Perhaps the SHP is not affecting Harry Mason at all. Perhaps it is, in fact, affecting Alessa right now. And due to her magical skills and aptitudes, she's simply making her delusions become a reality, and Harry has to walk down them. This is why the other world transitions without his control, as compared to Travis Grady, who could literally touch a mirror and jump in and out. Harry does not get that choice, and he does not get that choice because really he's dealing with whatever's conjured up by everyone else. Now, I could not tell you if the dogs or the mumblers or anything like that are conjured up because of Dahlia or Dr. Kaufman or because of Lisa, or simply because Alessa's in a nightmare realm where she is literally just thinking. And as she's thinking, Silent Hill says, okay, let's make it then. Let's make it. Let's make it. It is listening to the whims of the catalyst. So you're standing in a nexus and you're dealing with whatever the catalyst has to offer. I propose that Harry Mason, if he were to walk in here and there was no Alessa, for instance, if he were just a stranger walking into Silent Hill and Alessa was not here, then I submit that he would not see a thing. He'd see a ghost town with nothing more, nothing less. That's just what I propose. But using the SHP, the idea is that the delusions become reality, and reality morphs and manipulates. That's why you find a book with a story about a lizard, and all of a sudden you end up fighting the lizard, because this is something that was put into this world due to someone having it in their head. And in this case, since this is Alessa's school, I would assume this means Alessa read about this lizard and then made the lizard happen. Okay, things are going to get a little interesting with Silent Hill 2, but I need you to hang with me on this one, okay? Here's where things start getting really interesting as things seemingly made for a character or an antagonist or protagonist like James were being generated before he had even gotten to Silent Hill. Entities like Maria came to be and were slowly formed without the necessity of James actually being on the ground. So the first question that pops in is, how is this possible? Second question is he affected by SHP and thus creating Maria in town, being lured to the town by a letter conjured up in his own imagination? The answer is yes. Not only is he conjuring this up, but what he had done was to such a degree so heinous that his guilt and everything else layered on top of each other had started the effects of SHP. Now, I bet you're asking the next question, how is he affected by it? How is James affected by SHP wherever he may be? That answer is actually a lot easier than you think it is. Upon Alessa being able to escape Silent Hill, even a piece of her soul being able to escape Silent Hill, it had started to affect the outside world beyond Silent Hill. So much so that Silent Hill 2 seems to be a test phase. It seems to be a beta test for oncoming ideas. First, people are lured to Silent Hill, and a lot of people had this theory at first where you were lured to Silent Hill in order for anything to happen. No, what I mean is Silent Hill now had the ability to go outside of Silent Hill to use lures. It wasn't going to send Silent Hill murderers and pyramid heads everywhere all willy-nilly. It was going to send items or ideas or thoughts or people or visions and things like that. It was going to send it into the people's minds, and it was going to lure them back to Silent Hill where it had its main power and it could do its main primary function, which is that of punishment. And it succeeded. It actually got, and this is so far off the beaten path it's not even funny, so I'm prepared to argue in the comment section, it got 3 to 4 test subjects. It got an innocent, Laura. It got an absolute psychopath, Eddie. Angela, a victim. And then it got a killer in denial, like James. And it threw them all in Silent Hill at the same time, summoned them at the same time, and decided to punish them all at the same time, giving them various imageries and things like that they could only see once they actually got into town. Before then, they were in their own neck of the woods. They did not recognize each other, so obviously they weren't in a place where they could go, hey, I know you, you're Angela, you're that one girl. No, they didn't know each other. Silent Hill had been testing its power, or Alessa had been testing its power, or at this point, perhaps SHP is a little bit of both and they are now one and the same. Who knows? This theory has gone so far off the rails, it's not even funny anyway, so there's no way to prove yes or no anyway. But if there's any indication, Silent Hill 2 was the very first test of the idea that Silent Hill had a reach outside of Silent Hill itself. Before it was a test to see if Silent Hill could at least stand outside of Silent Hill. This was a test to see if it could actually affect things outside of Silent Hill. And the answer is yes. But I'm just getting started. I have definitely went on a tirade here, and it's definitely took a lot of research just to get this far. I want to hear what you think, because I'm going to keep going. I'm moving on to part 3 next. We're going to make it into the weird ones after I get done with the main primary series. And I'm going to explain to you why SHP could potentially work. And I'm also going to explain why it will not work as well. But I want to get through these as much as possible. I want to cover every single one. So I'll see you guys in the next video. If you need me for anything, you know where the fuck to find me. I suggest you do. Also, shout out to my patrons, because without you guys, you sexy beast, you wouldn't be able to keep me on the air doing what I'm doing now. In the meantime, I'm gonna get out of here. I got a lot going on today, and no time to get any of it done, so good times. Anyway, much love, guys, and I will see you guys in the next video very soon. Very, very soon.